This is Real Estate Rookie Show number 19. I am Ashley Kerr, and once again, Felipe Mejia is called out on his flexing. Another
it's
great
so funny
episode.
because we try to close out the episode and Dave is like, whoa, before we end, Felipe, I've heard that you have little itty bitty tiny biceps. I got to see this. And I was like, why did Ashley start this trend?
No, that was Ryan. That was Ryan Dossie at our one show. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, go back to look for Ryan Dossie. We did 2 of them, and I believe it was the first episode we did with him, I think, where he called you out on your bicep flexing.
We're not talking about Felipe's biceps. Today, we're actually going to be talking to Arvi and Dave. So this is a couple that's now in Nashville, and they are crushing it for sure in real estate investing. And you know what really warmed my heart is that they actually immigrated to this country 7 years ago, and they're crushing it in real estate. I love that. I love to see the underdog just crushing it and killing it. So super proud about that. They talk a little bit about that at the very end of the show of kind of the obstacles that they've had to overcome.
And Arvi, she actually started as the real estate investor. She found BiggerPockets, got into it, and bought her first flip. And she started doing it by herself and then kind of pulled Dave in, who already had construction experience. And Arvi actually quit she had a part-time job after college, and she ended up quitting it 4 months into flipping. So, I mean, just that right there is amazing that she had that confidence and she was doing well, that she, is doing this full time. And that was just a year ago that she got her first flip under contract.
Yeah, they're crushing it. They really are. I really like today's voicemail question. You know what? I'm not going to split it out, but just make sure that you listen to today's voicemail question. It's really, really good and really informative the way they answered. And if you guys do have any questions, you're always welcome to call in, leave us a voicemail at 1-888-5-ROOKIE, and we might use yours on the show.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out the show notes too at biggerpockets.com/rookie19. We asked Arvi and Dave to give us some photos too of their before and after of the flips that they've done. And it's really funny. They started in Buffalo, which is where I'm from, and now they live in Nashville, where you're from. So that is just a really funny coincidence.
I've gone ahead and challenged him to a basketball off because I think he played ball in Catalyst, but people don't know that I'm like 5'8". So when I show up ready to hoop him up, he's going to laugh at me.
Welcome, Arvi and Dave. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's hear a little bit about you guys, how you met, and how you got into real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure being here. I'm actually originally from Albania. It's a very small country in Europe. I moved here when I was 17, and I lived in Buffalo up to January when we moved to Nashville.
Do you have snow in Albania, or was the snow new to you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely new, and especially not like that. I mean, I'd seen snow before, but Buffalo is just a different story.
Right, yeah. And what about you, Dave?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a small country as well, but not in Albania. This is Suriname in South America. Born and raised there, moved here when I was 15, playing basketball on a basketball scholarship. And I moved to Buffalo, New York. That's where we met my sophomore year in college.
So a big change for you in weather, too.
I've never seen snow before. Never seen.
It's worse.
So South America, do both of you guys speak Spanish?
I do. Not because I was born or raised there. I just lived in Spain for a couple of years, so that's how I know. But
I speak Dutch because, that's my native language, Dutch.
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So your kids will be like,
yep.
Trilingual.
They'll be confused. They'll be very confused.
I love that. Arvi, ¿tu español sí es bueno?
Sí. Creo que sí, pero tal vez no tan bueno como el tuyo.
No, está perfecto. That's awesome, guys. So, guys, tell us a little bit about your real estate journey. What got you into real estate? Why you started? What are you doing now? And how far back that goes, and give us a little bit how your background also plays into that.
Yeah, so it doesn't go that far back. We were in college, just graduated. I was looking for jobs to try and see, what I wanted to do. I studied business. I always thought of myself in the corporate world. And Dave here was in basketball, so completely different. But right after college, I was applying for jobs, and my dad actually still lives in Albania. And I was talking to him how I'm not getting anything. And he's like, well, why don't you look into real estate? And I said, well, what can I do in real estate? I don't have money. I don't have anything. And he's like, well, just Google some stuff, see what you can come up with. And since I started Googling, I guess I never looked back. I found all my answers on BiggerPockets. That's how I found, just the beginning stuff like, okay, people can do this with no money. So that's how it actually got started. And then once I was looking into it, the seminar. I was in my car and I never listened to the radio, but for some reason this time, like the iTunes was not playing. So I heard this ad on the radio about a free seminar on real estate. Will teach you everything you know. I went there and then they kind of upsell you on the 3-day weekend. I paid for that, right? I didn't know that was the case, but I paid for it and I went home and I hadn't told Dave anything.
Nope.
And at that point, that was like $400, but for college, on the college budget, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I came home from practice and all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'm going to the seminar. Okay, cool. Is it free? I said, no, it's about $400. So at that point, I was completely against it. In college, every dollar kind of counts in college, especially. I was completely against it. And to make it even better, she came home and she had some books with her. I'm like, oh, that's probably not included in the 400s. Like, nope, it's not.
And we know as college students how much books cost too.
Exactly.
Yeah, that $400 could have paid for ramen noodles for 4 years of college.
No, and then what happened, Arvi?
I kept learning about it. I went to the seminar. I still had a million questions that I had unanswered. So I was reading as many books as I could, looking at as many videos or free information that I could. And then about 8 or 9 months later, I bought my first house to flip.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. So how long ago was this that you bought the first one?
This was just last year, actually.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so Dave, how did you get dragged into it then?
That's exactly what kind of happened. Because I was so into basketball after college. I contemplated going professional, but I decided to stick around and try to do coaching. So I went to Florida and I coached for a prep school for about a year. And I was just noticing that she was really struggling when it came to the construction part, the renovation part. And I was always kind of hands-on when it comes to renovations, especially with my dad. He was probably kind of a handyman at certain times. So I decided, she kind of offered me, like, don't you want to help out with the construction part? Like, you can run the whole construction side and everything. And I said, why not? I'll give it a shot. So
she suckered you in. Man.
I left that job.
Suckered you in, bro.
I left that job, came to Cold Buffalo to finish a couple of rehabs on that house.
That's awesome. What has taken on since that first property? How have you guys grown, expanded since then?
Yeah, so after that property, we actually got another one, and then we did that one, and then we got another one. So in our first year, we did 3 flips. And then now actually we started doing our own marketing, because back then I was just going through real estate agents. I kind of wanted to have that security that they were helping me out. They knew how to close and kind of giving me some guidance throughout the process in general. And then once we moved here to Nashville, we started doing our own marketing. And I believe since February when we started our own marketing, we've done 6 deals so far.
Awesome. And what are you doing?
That's
direct
really cool.
to seller marketing, like flyers or?
Yeah. We send out letters, pull out lists, and we send out letters to direct to sellers.
What part of your business, Arvi, do you handle? And then Dave, what part of it do you handle?
So I handle everything from doing the marketing, going to the meeting with the sellers and acquisitions, like making the offers, putting them under contract. And then, once if we're going to flip it or wholesale it or, whatever the exit strategy is, then Dave takes over.
Yeah, so I basically handle all the construction side of the real estate world, basically for Arvi. I handle when it comes to inspections and estimating rehab budgets. I also, besides from that, because at certain times we don't have houses to flip, basically, or rehabs. So I deal with regular retail clients as well. So besides from Arvi's properties, I deal with regular retail clients, and I do a lot of investors as well. So I handle all his contractors. And
as a newbie investor, how do you, Dave, handle the contractors? I mean, I guess you're not newbie anymore. You're grinding it out now, which is really cool. So kudos to you. But what are some tips that you have for our listeners when handling some, contractors?
Subcontractors. As investors, I had some notes down. As investors, there's a lot of theories behind it. Some investors don't like to pay at all until the job is complete. Some investors like to get 50%. I would advise what we use is 25, 25, and the remainder. Usually,
Love it.
For example, drywall. I give my sub, because drywall is a specific field. I'd rather sub it out to somebody that can get it done in 3 days. I give 25% of the contract when they start, 25% when all the boards are hung, and I usually give the remainder when it's ready for paint. But I also usually, especially if it's the first time I'm dealing with a contractor, I always take maybe 300 or 400 off for the last payment, because there's always some touch up drywall that needs to be done, extra sanding needs to be done, and that kind of gives you the guarantee that the contractor is most likely going to come back because he wants the rest of that.
That's interesting. I have a friend that what she does is she'll do if they finish early, she'll give them, like $50 off per day. But if they finish late, she'll take off on her bill, $25 per day. So do you do anything like that? Any kind of incentive for them to finish early where they get a bonus, or where if they are delayed, they, get money taken off?
Usually, no. Up to this point, I haven't. I had a couple of investors do that with me as well. Mm-hmm. However, for me as a contractor, you're always going to come to that point where the contractors will probably charge you premium price for that. They're going to charge you higher price to get it done really on time that day, because they want to make sure they get paid.
The way I do it in Nashville, and we're in the same neighborhood, but what I do with my contractors is we agree on a 33.33% of the job as we're going. So let's say that they come in and they're going to hang 3 boards. I say, okay, when you finish the first board, I'll give you this amount. When you finish the next board, I'll give you this amount. When you're done with the job, I'll give you the rest of the 33.33. And like you said, this keeps them coming back to make sure that they get paid, because to them, it always feels like they're a little bit behind on payment and ahead on the job. So they're willing to come back and finish to get that next pull. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool the way that you do it with the 25, and then leaves a little bit extra on the end. So I think that you probably have a better process than even I do.
Usually I don't really tell them about the last part until that day comes, because if you build a relationship with them, they will definitely understand. If they're good contractors, you will notice the reaction. If they're like, oh no, I need it now, I need the whole thing, then it's probably not going to work out. But if they guarantee, like, oh, no problem, keep it, I'll be back for sure, then for a fact that you found somewhat decent, a really good contractor.
That's a really good point, that if they're not putting up a big stink that they need that $300 right now, that probably means they're somewhat successful in their business, that they can hold off on having that $300 until they finish the job. I want to kind of walk through, because I'm doing my first big rehab where I'm trying to contract almost everything out. So I want to use this episode for my advantage. What are some steps that you guys recommend from like start to finish? And I kind of want to go into detail. So when you're doing a rehab, what's the first step? Like doing your due diligence and your permits. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Get a permit. That's just so important, just to get a general building permit, plumbing, electric, and usually HVAC. Get the permits, because this kind of ensures you that the work is going to be done the right way. For example, on the latest project we're doing, not my best hire, the electrician failed the electric twice, and that set us back 2 weeks. Even though that set us back 2 weeks, I'm assured that it's done the right way.
I guess from there, the second step is, so once you have the property, you did your due diligence and you got your permits, is to figure out the layout, design, and what you're going to demo, what you could keep from the project. So for example, especially if you're flipping, everybody likes open concept now. So you got to take into account, is the layout functional? Is it open concept? Would you and your family would want to live there? If we can't live there, if we don't like it personally, then probably other people are not going to like it too. So we try to make all the rehabs as if they were for ourselves. And then we choose on the design, depending on the neighborhood, price point of the property, how high end you're going to go, because you want to rehab good, but you also don't want to over rehab and, overspend on high end properties where the neighborhood is probably not calling for that. The third thing to this step is just demo. Are you going to completely gut the property? Are the doors maybe, can they be reused? So, which is what we did in this last flip that we're still working on. Are they, just try to keep it, because a lot of investors will just come and throw everything down and maybe not keep stuff that's good, but just saving the doors on this property saved me $2,000.
When you do that step, do you have like a process, a checklist? Do you use some kind of workflow software to track all of this stuff? I mean, when you say I'm keeping those doors, how do you communicate that to your contractors so that they accidentally don't get painted or ripped down?
Absolutely. So I usually I do the first walkthrough of the property, and I have like an Excel spreadsheet or something on my hand. I use an iPad, and I just go around and say, take this wall down, or take all of the drywall down here, keep these doors. And I mean, it's a little bit more detailed than what I'm saying it, but I write it for every single room and the totality of the project. And then I had that spreadsheet over to Dave or whoever the contractor is that's doing the demo.
It's all on me. That's really what it is. It's all on me. Basically what I do is the things that she wants to keep, that's for example doors or maybe a nice desk that's in there, I keep it in a certain room. I keep it in maybe in a closet, in a room, and I tell my contractor every time when a subcontractor comes in, I walk them through the property and explain to them you do not touch this. This is we're keeping this. We're just making sure that you prove the point that we're keeping this.
The most important part is just keeping that communication, because even when we hire subs, sometimes they have their own subs, so the communication could get lost there. So we make sure that we just try to communicate at all times.
That's really good. That's really smart, because like you said, sometimes your contractor will have subs, and communication is key to always have. I try to make it a point to stop by my properties at least 2 or 3 times a week. Because I want the subs to meet me as well and be comfortable with talking to me, because at the end of the day, you can tell a contractor one thing, but who's doing the job? And that's really important. It's the sub. Sure, the contractor is responsible, but the sub's the one doing the work. At the end of the day, they're the ones on their hands and knees, grinding it out. So you definitely want to have that communication. Did I miss the question, or maybe we just didn't ask? But how are you funding these deals? I mean, do you just have a super rich parent that funds all your money, and you have a empty bucket to just grab as much as you want, or how are you funding these deals?
So we're going through private lenders. Sometimes hard money when that's not completely open. Like for example, during the virus situation, the private lending was a bit more restricted. But most of them are for private money or hard money.
Why would you say that a lot of new real estate investors are scared to take that leap of using hard money? I feel like we get that question all the time, like, oh, I just can't get funding. But I go on BiggerPockets and I can find 20 today that are like, I got money to do. Like, why is that such a taboo? Why is it so fearful to do that?
I think I completely understand that part, because even on my first property, I had that same fear. Well, most of these hard money lenders or even private money, they'll make you sign a personal guarantee. So you're kind of on the hook for everything that goes on. And plus, even for myself, I don't want to have a bad name. Like if something goes wrong and I don't pay them, I never want to be in that position. So, I mean, that's a risk we take with every single property. It's not like, you did on the first and, that's it, no more fears. That's a fear and a risk every single time. But as long as you're buying, if you have all your systems in place, that's why the systems are important. It kind of helps put that risk down so low to where it's, almost nothing.
Are your private lenders, are they involved in the process at all? Do they like to come and see the house? I mean, we've talked about the due diligence. Do they come in and look at it with you? Do they ever have to want to approve your layout or design, or it's pretty much they trust you guys handle everything, here's the money, and you run with it?
It would depend on the private lender. So far, the ones I've worked with, they like to come in and at least see that, the rehab that I've estimated, it's somewhat in the ballpark of what they think it's going to cost. Because if I'm saying, it's going to be $20,000 for rehab, but, it's a full gut house, there's some type of disconnection there. As far as the actual design or layout or anything like that, I personally don't let them do that. I guess I just have more experience on, the flipping side, and I know what clients like because I've done it. They're mostly just on the investing or on the lending part. And honestly, most of the time I haven't had people say or lenders say that, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? they kind of leave that up to the flipper.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think I would want someone telling me what to do. It would kind of take away from being, self-employed on your rehabs.
Right.
But let's get back to what would be the next step then? Okay, so you've got demo, you've done your design, you've got your layout, you have your checklist. Let's bring in the contractors now. Do you use a general contractor, subs, and let's talk about the mechanics of the house.
Usually, there's two ways you can go with it. You can go with subcontractors or you can go with a general contractor. It really all depends what the budget is. If you want to just be laid back and focus on more leads or focus on more properties, then yeah, a general contractor is definitely the way to go. But if you want to be more hands-on and learning and seeing what the process is and how long it really takes and how they work, for example, if you want to learn how to do drywall or tile, stuff like that, I would definitely go with subcontractors. That way you kind of save some money as well and you learn more.
And one thing we figure out with subs is it's harder to fire a general contractor than it is to fire subcontractors. So if somebody's not doing their job right, you can just go directly to the drywall sub and say, sorry, man, this is not working out. But if it's a general contractor, it's just harder to do that in general because they have the whole project.
Yeah, I have also found that to be true. And personally, I only do sub work now. Mm-hmm. Growing up in the construction field, I learned, like you just said, subs are, I don't know, for some reason, generally a little bit easier to work with than just a contractor who has everything. Because if his electrician sucks, you can't fire his plumber because his plumber was still good. So, out of curiosity, do you guys have your GC license and your real estate license? Because you guys would be a great team.
So I don't have my real estate license.
I was a GC in Buffalo, New York. Although in Nashville right now, I have my home improvement license. I'm working on, it's a little bit different, but I'm working on getting my GC license because in Nashville, in Tennessee, you do have to study and pass a bunch of exams for that.
Yeah, good for you, man. I would challenge you guys to do that because, that potential is clearly there. You have the experience. I mean, I would hire you guys to do mine. I think it's great what you guys are doing. So that's really, really cool. So, okay, so let's keep going. What's next on the list? What's next to getting that the next part of the deal done?
It's the mechanicals and kind of inspecting before closing walls.
It's basically, that gives you the assurance we talked about kind of the beginning. That gives you that assurance that the plumbing is done right. The plumbing, electric is done. It's so important and people don't understand, but this is probably the most important step to getting all these inspections done.
The reason why we know that is because we've had that happen to us where we've closed walls in the past and then inspectors come back and say, well, you didn't get an inspection and we thought we did for, the sub that technically pulled the license, but he never did.
Exactly.
So that's why now we make sure, at least in Nashville, it's a bit easier. You can actually apply and see online everything when they pull it. So you have that extra assurance.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me be clear. This happened one time with electric. And I was not in the picture yet. She was doing the rehab, and I was not.
Let me clear my name, he said. Let me clear my name.
I was not the contractor. And she gave me a call, and she said, yeah, we have to open up almost all the walls.
Yeah, that's when he said, all right, I'm coming to
this is it. This is it.
Do you guys have any tips are there certain things that when you are interviewing a contractor or he's quoting a job that just kind of turns you off from that contractor? Like for me, a couple things I've noticed just from the few that I've hired is if they don't write things down and take measurements like that first day, I feel like that is like a huge red flag for me. Do you have
I can already see Ashley handing them the measuring tape. Hey, dude, get this on paper. What are you doing?
And I just, is there anything like that you guys just kind of look for in a contractor that is kind of a red flag as to not to hire them?
For me, as being a contractor, I like to have time at the property. So if you walk me through the property, okay, cool. You're not going to see me take measurements. I'm basically just listening to the idea, taking notes, mental pictures. But when it comes to actual putting the time in, let the contractor be. If the contractor, let's say he asks, well, can I get 10 minutes just to take measurements? And usually what a contractor would do, he'll take measurements, he'll take pictures, he might make a phone call. He might make a phone call to his plumber or electrician to ask him some questions to clarify on stuff.
That's interesting you say that because I'm actually the same way. Ashley probably wouldn't hire me then, just based on what she's saying. I'm actually the same way. I like to walk around with, I've had clients privately call me or reach out to me and just say, hey, Felipe, would you mind helping me build out 2 bedrooms downstairs? I'm like, yeah, for sure. I'll help you do that. And in our initial conversation, I like to walk around with the client, just listening to understand what they want to say, not necessarily reply. I'm just there as like, okay, soaking it all in. What is their vision for this? And then I I don't destroy their vision, but I say, that's probably not going to happen. This is more like reality. Dave, would you say that's probably pretty accurate?
That is very true. That especially
outlandish vision.
Especially when they give you the budget and they tell you, I want this. I'm like, that's not really possible.
You're going to get a closet, maybe.
Well, I need to clear my name here. And when I say that they don't take measurements or, write things down, they still are giving me an estimate.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's hard to give an estimate when they didn't write down exactly what I wanted. And actually the worst time that happened, the guy forgot to put flooring into his estimate. So like right there's a big red flag. Like the flooring is like one of the easiest things, but he didn't measure and he just forgot to add it in. And he told me he accidentally sent someone else's bid to me, but it was like I had a custom sliding barn door. Like how many other bids had that for him? But so that was funny.
At that point, yeah, that's probably not a good, I guess, contractor.
Yeah, I didn't go with him. Okay, so now that we have closed up the walls, what's next?
It just comes down to painting, like the finishing touches, like painting. You're putting on the kitchen, like closing in the bathrooms, tile, flooring, and all that stuff. So at that point, so in my personal projects, I like to have all that already figured out before we get to that point. So there's no hangups. Like if they get to the point and I don't have the paint color picked out or the kitchen cabinets are not ready and all that stuff, then that just puts us back on the rehab, especially on flips. That's time is money. The sooner you're done, the more you're probably going to make. So I usually, when I mentioned earlier, when I did that initial walkthrough, I already have an idea what I'm going to paint, what colors I'm going to choose, and what's the overall design is going to be on the property.
And for me, that's a tip to anybody that's basically, if you're doing it yourself or you're hiring contractors, what I usually like to do is I would like to walk around the property, especially after drywall, after paint. I like to walk around with a piece of tape, a blue tape, and I just mark like, oh, this trim piece needs to be replaced. And there needs to be sanded down a little bit more. I just like to do that. And after that, don't be scared of anybody that is doing it themselves. Don't be scared to spend a little bit more money on material, especially when it comes to trim or flooring. Like if it's not done right, if it has too many gaps or too much caulking, it's gonna ruin the whole thing. People are gonna walk in. If you're trying to sell the house, people are gonna walk in and it's like, oh, that's not really done professionally. What else is not done professionally in the house?
That's key right there, Dave. I'm so glad you said that. So I've flipped a couple of properties in my days. No, I'm just kidding. but it's true. Even more than just the seller, I'm more scared of the inspector. Mm-hmm. If the inspector comes in and finds one thing, he's going to dig into that even further, right? So if you can't get the basics down, having little things like having a level light in the bathroom or, like you said, is there too much caulking on the on certain pieces or doors, a little rougher than they should be. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, well, I wonder what else they cut corners on, right? So I love that you said that. I think that's really key. People need to listen to that part again. It's in the details because, like I said, more than just the buyer of the property you're going to flip it to, it's the inspector who's going to come in. And if he finds one thing, man, he's going to go through it. I'll never forget. I saw an inspector one time. He said that he had noticed that the door to get to the upstairs attic wasn't enough insulation on it. So what he did was he brought in this measuring thing and checked all the walls to make sure that all the insulation was the right way, because how insulation has a certain way that you have to put it in. So he went through and destroyed this guy's flip, and he said all your insulation's wrong, lost the seller. But it was all because he didn't put the insulation back on the covering to get to the attic. I'm talking about the attic door and has insulation on top. So apparently insulation wasn't put back. And he was like, you're getting too much heat. You know what? Let's just go ahead and check all the walls. Ouch. And
it's not even the inspection. It's your name too, your brand name. I mean, word of mouth and referrals are one of the biggest assets you can have, and you want them to be good.
Yeah, for sure. And we've had that happen too with inspectors. One of our properties, there was a little bit of mold in the basement, especially in Buffalo, where you get the basement and it was just a little bit of mold that we could have fixed. And he was like, well, this is probably all mold in the whole house, and the buyers backed out. So an inspector can really make or break your buyer.
Mhm.
They have a lot
Yeah.
of
100%.
power into the buyer.
And especially something with mold too, where it could just be one little area, but someone can blow it up. Well, it could be in the whole house. You don't know. But better to take care of it sooner rather than later. Okay, so what about like the finishing touches? So we've got, like the little things you'd go through, do your walkthrough. So you have contractors come back and then take care of those things. And then do you do one last final walkthrough together?
Yeah, absolutely. So our last walkthrough, or I guess our last step is once everything comes together, are we going to stage it? Are we is it on the price point to where we stage it? Are we going to go with a professional stager or maybe stage it ourselves? I've done before in properties where a little trick I learned actually through BiggerPockets discussions that people were staging it through Rent-A-Center.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I did on my first flips. I said, this is great. I can go in because you can rent TVs, washer and dryers if you wanted to, pictures, couches, everything from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did on my first flips. I staged them with a rent center. I went there, I picked everything out that I wanted. They come deliver it and set everything up for you. And then in a month or, however long you want to keep them for, they come and take everything back.
That's a really cool hack. I've never thought about that. Somebody should hashtag that, hashtag Rent-A-Center hack, because I've heard that you can make an extra 5 or 10 G's just by, visually showing somebody what the layout looks like, because a lot of people don't have the vision that you might have, but two, there's a ton of out-of-state investors investing in Nashville. And if they have pictures of a beautifully furnished home, they're going to be more prone to buy that than just the empty gray walls, white baseboard type of house, So that's a really cool hack. I never thought about that. I'm going to have to do that. Now, I'd be really upset if I was the guy having to deliver the furniture and pick it back up in 30 days.
Yeah.
When I went to the rent centers, I was like, listen, I'm a flipper. I see she's like, oh yeah, we do this all the time for flippers. So I was like, okay.
Oh, really? So they know this concept already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever
there you
done the online staging where it's just the pictures?
We have not. I know a lot of investors that have had a lot of success with that, and I think we're going to try that on our next flips. It is cheaper than going through even Rent-A-Center, or doing it through a professional stager, and they look great. I've seen pictures that they just look like, the furniture is actually there.
Now, when it's time to sell, you've got it staged. Do you guys do for sale by owner, or do you have a realtor that you work with?
No, we usually just list it with a realtor. It's just quicker and easier, and it just takes one step off, or one thing off my shoulder, basically. And you just get way more exposure. I guess you can try to sell yourself, but we just prefer to go with realtors.
That's one easy thing to outsource.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some tips and tricks that you would give to people that are listening right now that are like newbie investors, that they're ready to do a rehab? It's on a budget. They're a little nervous about going in. It's their very first one. What are some tips and tricks that you would give them so that they don't make the same mistakes that maybe we've all made, right? So let's add some value to our listeners. What are some tricks that you would say, guys, you got to do this? And, I'm going to go through the list real quick and then see if you can add just whatever you can think of. But we went through due diligence and permits. We said layout, design, and demo, the mechanicals and the inspections, closing up the walls, kitchen, paint, flooring, finishing touches, punch list, and then Dave running around with tape, tagging stuff that he doesn't like. So on top of that, what would you say, hey guys, you got to do this?
So there's some investors that go all the way out and get a retail inspection done before they even put it on the market. We haven't felt the need to do that, but if you're really nervous or if you even wanted to check on your contractors, as a further step, you can absolutely do that. What I personally did in the beginning before I even bought the flips, I would pay an inspector and I would walk through with him and kind of basically learn everything that they were pointing out at. And he would tell me, well, this is not right. And I would ask, wait, why is that not right? Like, what was going on there? A lot of it is just going to be through the experience as well. So the most important thing is just getting that first step and, doing it.
For renovations, I would say try to do stuff yourself in the beginning. In the beginning phases, try to do certain stuff yourself. You're gonna fail. I'm telling you right now, you're gonna fail miserably at point that you're gonna feel like you don't want to do this anymore. But that's really part of it. If you don't put the work into it, you won't realize like how hard it is to do certain things. Like when people get quotes for, let's say, drywall or anything like that, or putting in tile, And a lot of people, a lot of clients are like, oh, it's just putting in tile. No, it's not. Like, it's not just putting in tile. It's not just putting in drywall. Like, it's
harder than that.
Yeah, it is harder than that. Yeah. So trying to do stuff yourself in the beginning phases is really key. And other key I say is have close friends and family that are maybe into the construction world that can possibly come help you out in the beginning, give you some tips of how to start and make sure you're on the right path.
Cool. I love that. Giving some confidence to some of those newbies. Before we transition into the rookie deal that we'd want to talk a little bit about, let me ask you this. What advice would you give to brand new listeners or brand new people in real estate that are like, okay, I'm going to go hard money. I know that I can do this. How would you advise them to talk to those lenders? Because I feel like that's like hard money lending or private money is all about relationship building or feeling confident. So what would you tell our listeners? Say, hey guys, these are some key tips and tricks when you're out there, recruiting money, if you will, for your deal. What would you say?
So I'll tell you what I did, and it worked great with me when I hired my first private lender. And then we were kind of both interviewing each other because he wants to make sure I'm right, but I also want to make sure that he's right for me. I made a packet of just kind of introducing myself and my business and what my goals are for the business and, where I see myself in maybe a year or two. Or I also wrote down pretty much everything that the flip needs. So he could see, like when I showed up, we actually had like a lunch meeting. I showed up, I told him, listen, I brought this thing. It just explains a little bit more about me and, what I'm trying to do with the flip. And he was just like, oh, wow, this is great. I've never had anybody do this. And we ended up working together. So that's just another way of adding confidence. And, you may be new, but you're showing them that you are doing your due diligence, that you have a system in place, and you're going to try to minimize risk as much as you can.
I love that because I've done the same thing before. Yeah. And then now you probably include your past deals in it too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The more information you can provide, the better. And Dave, are you involved in the money part at all? Or that's Arvi handles that?
Not really. I tend to, sometimes she kind of uses me because sometimes all of a sudden I'm there with an investor. I'm like, wait, we didn't schedule this. And I have to walk them through like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And make them sure I'm like, this is going to be something nice, like boost some confidence in them. But that's,
the hype guy.
Is it? Yeah. Seems like Arvi just keeps dragging you into meetings and deals and real estate. Well, look, man, when you get your Ferrari or your Tesla or whatever your dream car is, you're not going to feel like you got dragged in anymore. So stick in there, man. Exactly. It's worth it.
Are you guys doing this full time now for the past year? It's been full time. You don't have any other jobs right now?
No, even when I started,
awesome.
This was full time. I actually had a part time job when I first started, and then about 4 months into the whole investing thing, I just dropped it, and we've been doing this.
Wow, so cool. Okay, well, let's break into your rookie deal that you guys want to share with us. Where was this deal? Was this in Buffalo or Nashville?
So I'm actually going to talk about one in Buffalo. This was a duplex. It had been listed on the MLS for probably 6 months, and nobody had even touched it. And, it would expire and then come back on the market. It was in an amazing location, like right downtown Buffalo, walking distance to everything. It just needed a lot of work, which is why people, I guess, didn't want to give it the time of the day. And it used to be a triplex, and then they had it taken down into a single family at this point. So I knew that the only way to make that deal work was if I turned it into a duplex. So before we even put an offer in, I was doing my due diligence. I went to the city and I asked, about this property, if it could be turned into a duplex. And they said, yeah, absolutely. I don't see a problem with it. So I believe they had it listed for $99. I got it under contract and bought it for $90. We put, I believe, was it $85,000 to $90,000?
85 to 90. When you walk through this place, when I first walked through this place, I told her no.
Yeah.
I told her no. I saw so many problems. Like, no, let's not do this one.
Yeah. But at that point, I had made up my mind. I just really believed in the location of that property. Mm-hmm. So that's
she already signed it. I walked through the property and I was like, no, I'm not doing it.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for, actually, babe, it's already there.
It was already there.
On one of our shows, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had Elise on, and she said you can take the crap out of the house, but you can't take the house out of the crap. Like, saying the location is key.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Was this your first deal, second deal, third?
This was my third.
Third deal? Okay. So what was the next step after you signed your life away?
Right.
Y'all's life. Y'all's in the South. Y'all's life away.
Right. So we finished it. I originally thought the rehab was going to take 3 months. It actually took us 5 months to complete the whole thing. And that's why I leave the construction site to him, because I'm not good at the rehabbing part. So we rehabbed it, and we actually refinanced out of it as a commercial loan. We were originally just going to keep it as a rental, but at that point we decided, we're already here. Why not house hack this thing? We love the location, it's right there. So let's just house hack it. So that's what we did up until the point that we moved to Nashville, which was in January. And since then we've been renting out both parts or both sides. And we cash flowed it really good. I just our net cash flow on this property is like $1,000.
Wow, that's
nice.
awesome.
Dave,
That's great.
Have you learned to trust Arvi now, or are we still kind of hanging out?
Yeah. It's getting better. It's getting better.
Is it getting better?
Yeah, it's getting.
She seems like she's crushing it, man. You might want to follow that one, buddy. You might want to follow through.
I gotta keep her on her toes, so I can't give her all the confidence.
Yeah,
that's right.
So when you guys purchased this, you used private money for the deal, and you used that for the rehab too?
Yes, correct.
And then did you refinance into long-term financing, and what did that refinance process look like?
So it was just a long-term refinancing. At that point, we hadn't decided to house hack it, so I'm glad we didn't go that, the FHA side. So we just got a commercial loan. It's on our business name, so we just got a commercial loan on it for 30-year fixed. I forget what the rate is, to be honest with you. But yeah, so it's just a fixed 30-year.
Great. Yeah. And then what if someone wanted to kind of recreate that same deal? Can you kind of reverse engineer it for us as to, what advice and tips can you give to someone to kind of find, a duplex like that or single family and turn it into a duplex?
So the first thing I would say is before you even put an offer in it, make sure that it can be turned into a duplex, because the zoning is different everywhere. When I went to get to ask for that, that street could be turned into a duplex, but then the street over could not. And it was the same street name, but it was just, across the other side. So that's super important if you have a vision of rezoning certain properties or land, whatever you're buying, you got to make sure beforehand, because if you buy it and then they tell you no, then, it's going to break your deal, basically your whole vision.
And who is they? Who did you go to? Is the building inspector, the city clerk, the tax assessor? Who do you go to ask about that?
That's a really good question. I went to the city of Buffalo, I guess, when I was there, and it was the the inspector and the zoning office. So
the code enforcement officer.
Yeah. So once you go there, they kind of redirect you. Okay, this is the best person for you to talk to. Because at that point, I didn't know how to do any of this. Yeah. That was a learning experience for me too. I just went there, and the front desk person, they just guided me in the right direction.
And that's a good point, is you didn't know, so you just went and asked.
You're probably going to go back a couple of times because you're probably going to miss some documents, but and they're not always nice in that setting. They're always like, okay, you're here for what? Like, they're going to be annoying about it a little bit sometimes, but you have to do it.
But it seems like it was worth it for you guys.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next section of our show. And this is probably one of my favorites. This is called the MVP, right? So, and this part, we want to know about a key player on your team. This could be an agent, lender, handyman, deal finder, your partner, whatever the case may be. Who is an MVP in your real estate journey that you would say, man, it would be a lot harder to do this if this person wasn't on our team? So who would you say that is?
So when I first started, I got to give it to my agent. She had a lot of experience with working with investors. She knew a lot of contractors. So she was just really knowledgeable in that part. And she helped me find the good deals too. We walked through so many properties together, and she would be the one to tell me, listen, this is not the greatest area, and it's probably not going to give you the greatest return. Let's try to find something else. So having somebody, especially when you just started, to kind of give you that feedback, it was super important to me, and definitely helped me a lot to kind of get my bases right so I can grow later.
And how did you find her?
So she was actually through a referral. I when I was in college, my career advisor, actually, her husband was an inspector, a home inspector. So I went to her because I knew that before, and I said, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. She's like, yeah, feel free to call him, talk to him. So I did. And then when I talked to him, he said, do you have an agent? I said, no, I'm just still trying to get started. He was like, well, I have a great referral for you. So that's like the networking and talking to people about what you're doing. It's always key, I found, in this business.
Well, let me give you a two-part question. How do you manage communication with your MVP to continue to have deal flow running through? And then how do they get paid?
So in my case, I guess as an agent, we like on the MLS, you can set up a search on certain criteria that you're interested in buying from. So she would set up a search for me. And every time that I saw a house that, could fit my criteria, we would go ahead and take a look at it, run it, walk through it together and all that stuff. And then as an agent, they'll just get paid when we close on the deal.
And Dave, would you say that the realtor is your MVP too? Or is it Arvi finding all the good deals, doing the acquisitions?
But for me, I had a mentor. I had from the construction side, I had a mentor in Buffalo, somebody that kind of guide me through it, the running a construction business, actually recognizing good subs, honestly. And I didn't pay him, but I added some value. I was always kind of there if he needed me, like, Dave, I need an extra hand at the job site today. Can you come help? And I basically work for free. And some people might not do that because they think you're a business owner, but I took that chance because he was teaching me so much. I figured the best way, I didn't have that much capital to spend on just like a mentor, because that can get expensive. Mentors in any profession can get expensive. So I decided just to add some value.
And sometimes the best mentors are the ones that aren't paid. I mean, yes, there are great paid mentors, but you build that personal relationship with each other. And that's why it works, because you're helping each other. And,
Exactly.
there doesn't need to be a cost associated with that. That's great. Well, thank you guys for sharing. And if anyone wants to learn more information about the MVPs this week, you can go to biggerpockets.com/rookie19.
Just a reminder, I think on our last episode, the young gentleman said he would fly out to go talk to his mentor. Speaking about what Dave's talking about, he would fly out when he had an important question that he wanted to talk about with his mentor, because he valued his mentor's time that much. So no, I don't think working for free for your mentor is a negative thing at all if you don't have finance, or if that's the only way that you can add value.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I got to pay for a mentor. And that's just not true. If you can add value to your mentor, you're going to have a great relationship with that person. Anyone who wants to add value to me or to anyone, that's going to, most of the time, is probably more valuable than money. Most of your mentors have money. What they don't have is the time anymore. So they need that. They need your time.
Yeah. So Dave, when you fly up to visit your mentor, let me know so I can hire you for a few jobs. Okay, so let's move on to the rookie request line. This is where we have our listeners call in and ask a question, and we'll have you guys answer it. If anyone else would like to call in, you can leave us a voicemail at 1-888-5-ROOKIE. And this one is from Brendan.
I just have a question for you about direct mail marketing. How does it work? I was writing letters and leaving them on people's doors, but that would take me all day, and I'd maybe do 100, 200. I wanted to see maybe how you could do it online or off like a database where you can get people's addresses. You hear so much about direct mail marketing. I kind of want to jump into how exactly you would start and go about doing that.
We also covered this, I think it was in Rookie episode 9 and Rookie 13, but I'm interested to hear what your guys' take is on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do. I pull the list online and I hire a company to do all the writing for me. When I first started out, I was actually handwriting myself to a couple hundred a month, but it's just not scalable. Like, I started to not have time with flips going on and all that. So it was just best to hire it out. So I guess my tip would be look into your county records wherever you are, like in Nashville, Buffalo, wherever. Look into your county records to pull lists from there. That's pretty much a free way to pull them, so you don't have to spend any money. There's also companies that sell you the list. I think Listability or Listasource is one of them as well. So I would just pull them from there. You can go put your criteria, like you need seniors with equity, or whatever the criteria is that you're trying to go after. You can just pull it from there. And honestly, the best thing to do is just hire a direct mail company to do that for you, because it is just so worth the money.
Yeah, I agree. And then, it's always important to hire a professional in your field, because you already have certain things that you're focusing on, right? Dave's focusing on construction. Arvi, you're focusing on acquisition and getting financing and making sure the property is where it needs to be. The last thing you want to do is go home and write 100 letters, right? Like, so like, what are you good at? Do that and leverage everything else. And that's going to make you super successful in your business. And I think you guys are crushing that for sure. So kudos to you guys. I'd love to come visit one of your flips and kind of, steal some ideas. So that'd be really cool. We should do that one day.
We have one going on right now, actually. So might as well.
Let's go. I'll be back in Nashville in a week. What's
All right.
up?
Let's get it.
Let's do it. All right. Hey guys. So just to kind of wrap this up, we do have a little bit of a fun here. We like to ask you 3 or 4 questions to kind of get to know you a little bit better. Is that okay with you guys? Are you ready for that?
I have a question for you though. Like, there's a rumor going around that you have like small biceps or something. Like, is that like something? I heard about it. I'm not.
Where are you at, Dave?
The episodes
Where are
just
you
keep
at,
getting better
bro?
and better.
You win right now. All the gyms are closed. I can't compete right now.
Arvi, put him up, big dog. Put him up. What do you got there?
No, I got a little bit. Okay, you win.
No, the last gentleman. Okay, now it's personal. The last gentleman on our show was like in a military school, and he posted it up, and I was like, Lord, let me I sunk down in my chair. This guy filled up both like
we did
sides
the selfie for Instagram, and you guys have both.
We got to take an
it,
Instagram picture with you guys as well. That's hilarious. I love that. I can't believe I just got called out on that. Actually, I hate you, by the way.
So now the new thing is people aren't going to want to be the guest to talk about real estate. They'll just want to come on to have a flex off with Felipe.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so let's talk about what's a bucket list item that you guys both would like to cross off? Doesn't have to be the same thing that you have together or separate things.
I personally, it's on my bucket list to go skydiving. I'm really scared to do it, but it's like one thing that I think I can do it.
Personally, I just want a Range Rover, man. She always talks to me about like, what car do you want in the future when we become millionaires and stuff like that. I'm like, I just want a Range Rover. That's the only car I want. That's the only car I just want a Range Rover.
And I love how you say when we become millionaires, not
Come
if
on,
we become millionaires.
Arvi.
I love that.
Arvi and Dave, you're speaking it into existence. I love that.
Yeah.
When we become, you have that belief. That's awesome. So let me jump to the next question. And this comes from a more personal level from the heart. My family immigrated to this country as well. And we've gotten a lot of pushback in the past and all that, but we've overcome that, in everything that we do. And I was just wondering, both of you guys said that you immigrated to this country, and it seems like just not too long ago. What obstacles have you had to overcome, and what advice would you give to, other immigrated investors as to how to push through those?
Oh my gosh, we had so many. I can't even count. I guess the first thing would be language barrier. We, in our countries, at least, we were grown with the English being as a second language, so it was kind of easier for us. On our parents' base, it wasn't as easy. My dad, for example, he doesn't really speak it that well, but he can still make his way, through America and still be fine. But that was the first thing. I guess from there is just kind of fitting in. Our cultures are so different. And it was hard for me the first year. I didn't have any friends. I was like the loner in high school because I just couldn't make any friends. I didn't know how to fit in because it was so different. From there, I guess just getting into college, I don't know. What was yours?
This for international, when you come over, I moved here when I was 15 by myself, basically. I took the chance to come here and to eventually create a better situation for me, my family, and for my kids. That's the ultimate goal. And I think that we should always keep that in mind, especially international, that there's an extra motivation. Right. Even though you have extra motivation, it's the most important thing to adapt. Like if I haven't adapted to becoming a salesperson or becoming a contractor, it wouldn't work out for me. I would not be in this situation right now.
One of the things that I had to get accustomed to was, and I was born and raised in Nashville, but growing up with a Latino family, I still had the culture and relevances that I learned with my family, but then I also had to learn the customs and cultures of Nashville. And it was hard because, like, let's say that I was born in or let's say that I was American and born in Nashville here, and then my parents had the customs of here, then I only had one customs to learn, right? But for example, you meet a Latino family, you're given a kiss on the cheek. you meet someone else outside, you're doing a handshake. And I know that sounds so simple, but that's another thing that you have to think about. Okay, who am I meeting? What is their culture? How do I adapt? Right. So I completely agree with what you're saying. For example, another thing in our culture, there's no such thing as contracts. Everything is based on a handshake, and your last name means everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Mejias. They do this, right? Like that last name is more honorable than a contract on paper. But here, everything is contract, and everyone's out to sue you or try to get one over on you. So like that was a lot different as well. I don't say this a lot on the show, and I don't give this advice to a lot of people, but a lot of my Latino subs, there's nothing on paper. We meet at the job site, we shake hands, we agree on something, and I've yet to have one, screw me over on that, because their name is more respected than just a piece of contract. So I get it. I mean, I get what you're saying.
And we completely get where you're coming from. Actually, I would say probably all of them, all of our subs are Latinos too. That's where we see ourselves more because even like the cultures that all the things that you just mentioned, they relate completely to our cultures. And actually, in Albania, it's not one kiss on the cheek, is 2 kisses. And whenever my family or Dave would meet my family, he's always confused. I'm like, okay, which one?
Still like it though. I'm not gonna say no.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that with us. I appreciate that.
No problem.
And hopefully it can inspire.
I promise you that question was not on the list.
Yeah. Hopefully it can inspire some other people too that are wanting to get into real estate and have some obstacles that, if you guys can do it, so can they. So thank you for sharing. So what is, when you guys were kids, what did you want to be when you grew up? Probably wasn't a real estate investor.
No, absolutely not. I personally always saw myself as like, a CEO and a corporate, like that type of stuff.
I was trying to be a basketball player. I was just trying to go pro.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was my main goal. After that, I'm good at drawing too. I wanted to become an architect, but couldn't really afford that profession. So I stick with basketball.
Well, you're designing houses, so you're doing the fun part of architect. You don't have to do all the actual drawing.
Dave, you keep talking about basketball, man. Look, I'm in Nashville. We can get to a park, bro.
Right.
We can play some 21.
See who's got the
You sure?
I am.
Okay, because I like to hoop, man. I like to hoop. NAC over in Antioch?
Heard of it.
Let's go hoop. I got you. I love it. No, you guys are awesome, man. I love this. This is probably going to be another one of my favorite podcast episodes. But for the last question, we have a little bit of rookie hazing. Now, we'll help you out here a little bit. What is your guilty pleasure song? Would you like to sing to us a little bit of that song as well?
Ain't no mountain high enough. We sing that song sometimes during rehabs, flips, and stuff like that when it's not going well. So here we go.
That's so funny because we just had that too. Someone else just said that. That's really funny.
Go for it.
Ain't no mountain. Come on. You're not going to sing with me?
I cannot do this.
I'm not singing. She's not singing.
Dave, no, let's go, bro. I got you.
Ain't no mountain high enough.
Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough. Come on, Billy one.
Oh, you left Ashley by herself. That's hilarious. I love that. Arvi, what about you? What's your favorite song?
I'm going to stick to that because trust me, you did not want to hear me sing. So let's just keep it at that for this episode.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And we're going to put a lot of this information in the show notes. We'll add links. Maybe you guys can even give us a couple before and after pictures of some of your flips we can put in the show notes too. You can find out more information at biggerpockets.com/rookie19. And do you guys want to, before we end this, can you tell everyone where to find some more information about you guys if they want to connect with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. It's arvi.carkanji, and that's CARKANJI.
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Dave. And my last name, ARLAUD.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Yeah. I'm Ashley at Wealth for Rentals, and he's Felipe at Felipe Mejia, REI. And don't forget to join our Facebook group. Search Real Estate Rookie, and you'll be able to find us.